It will soon do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for signing up, and I'm just asking folks to just say hello in the chat so I can see who's doing what and kind of get a sense of who we've got in the room this evening. So I love that Jade/Abby has given us her mobile number, but hopefully we should be good. Cool. I'm going to jump in, folks, because like I said, we've got a fair amount to get through. So let me do this. Can everyone see? No, that's not the screen that I wanted to share with you. Let me try that again. There we go. All right. All right. So, hi Sarah. I'm just seeing everyone else. Hi Richa. Am I saying it right? Is it Risha or
Richa? It's Richa.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so chat and Mag is here as well. Some of you know Mag. If you have a question and I have missed it, drop it in the chat, and we'll try and capture the chat anyway and see if we can answer it after if we don't get to it today. So, all right, one more thing I've got to make sure I can see is who is in the room. Right. Okay, folks. This talk is kindly been put together by RecWorks and Navoda, and I'll share a little bit more about what this story is about, why we're offering this particular course for free, and so on. But the crux of this is that there aren't enough women in senior roles. You don't need me to tell you that. But if we don't do anything substantial to kind of change that and change what those opportunities look like for women, then not a lot will change. And if any of you read, as I'm sure you do, any of the reports and so on, we're not really making much progress in this space in terms of making it possible for women to get into those senior roles. And so the idea of this is, so RecWorks approached me and said, you're doing the Leaders Who Coach X100 program, which is where we're teaching next generation leaders, 100 of them, to become leaders who coach for free. So they approached us and said, look, how about we create a pipeline? How about we invest in future talent that would be ready so that we can find these individuals and put them in these positions. So that's kind of where the big idea came from, was just bringing together the needs of different organizations and the course that we run at Better Conversations and put that together. And so that's the purpose this evening. I want to share with you some of those skills, so get you thinking about, okay, there's some shifts I need to make here, and what are they? And also have actually some techniques and skills that you can walk away with from this evening and give them a go. So cool, we've got lots of people still joining, which is ace. Okay, a little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Better Conversations. I've been an executive coach for about 9 years. I started my training when I lived in the States for a period of time. I partner with C-suite leaders, a lot of founders of startups and scale-ups, and support them through the transitions that they're going through as they're trying to scale and build their teams out and so on. During lockdown, my lockdown project was actually building out a course that had been in my head for quite a few years. You know, I'd had this idea, I'd spoken to a few people about it, I got a lukewarm sort of response to it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to build it. And the reason that I was so committed to building it was I'd been doing some culture program work in organizations and one-to-one coaching with, you know, across all of the functions within an organization. And I could see that there were other things going wrong or that were difficult, but I didn't have the remit as an external coach to go in and really kind of make that change. And what sort of occurred to me was, isn't it better if the people who are charged with making change are actually in the organization, because you're the people day to day having the conversations, you're the frontline people who are modeling for your teams. And so it makes sense that you have these skills. So, and that was pretty much leaders who coach. And so what I'm going to share with you this evening is some of the materials. In fact, everything from it is stuff that we cover in the course. Obviously, I'm giving you a condensed version of a 12-week course. So I've picked out the things that I think are kind of really pertinent, and we'll get into some of the discussions here. So if you've just joined us, please say hello in the chat. Just give us an idea of maybe your role, what you'd like to get out of this evening. I like to see the names and kind of what people are up to, and that helps me focus the discussion here. To give you a sense of the sort of the credibility or size of this course, it is CPD certified. It got flying colours the first time I submitted it in there to them, which I'm really proud of, for the reason that I think this is kind of a new area, and it's really important that the skills and so on, the experience that leaders have on this course sticks, basically stays, is embeddable, is something that you're practicing and you can get into straight away and start to make those shifts, rather than it being, I didn't want it to be a theory thing. So it's highly practice-based, and I'll get into that more a little later. This is what people say about it. And I have to say, just even this kind of experience and the feedback, I've learned a lot through it. I've learned a lot through leading cohorts and what they value and what's important to them. So I just I'm sharing this with you just so you can see, have confidence that what I'm sharing with you is significant and has been tested by a lot of people. Speaking of which, Mag, who is here on the call with us, Mag was my first graduate. I really built it and she was consuming it, literally. I was writing it one week and delivering it to her, and then she was consuming it and working through it, and then we'd have calls. So and it was an absolute, there's a lot that I love about Mag, but the sort of the passion and the commitment that she gave to that really kind of spurred me on, and I had this sense, okay, this has merit, this is going to stack up. Mag has since gone on to be a coach. Do you want to say a quick hello, Mag? Because I feel like you can tell us.
Yes, I would love to say a quick hello. You're very kind in your introduction. So yeah, I had been 20 years in technology when the pandemic hit. I had been focused on front end my whole career, and I had loved that. And then I had got into leadership as well. And where I was at in 2016 was I needed a coach, and luckily there was a good one available. And I learned a lot through that. And at some point I just thought, look, I'm just going to be the lead, because it's annoying when other people lead me, and if I make a mistake, I know that I'll fix it. So I joined the course as student number 1, which was a lovely privilege and honor. And that was the start of the soundtrack to the pandemic. I've since so much believed in it that I've gone on myself to be a coach, and now I'm a teacher at a leadership coach. So it is full commitment from my part, and it's an easy thing to be committed to. So welcome all, and looking forward to hear what you take away.
Thank you, Mag. And you can, if you haven't been to it, the webpage that's got all the information about this particular cohort has got Mag's full sort of story about how she came to this point and what was important to her. So if you haven't watched that, it's a 12-minute Q&A with Mag. Okay, so what are the essential skills of leadership? And I'm sure, you're here, so you've got an interest and you've got an awareness of, best practice and what isn't so great, or what's difficult, or what you're not sure about, and so on. So let me share with you, make sure I click in the right space here. So, okay, let me move some stuff around my screen. So the essential skills for you is in a future leadership, senior leadership role, or CTO role. Obviously, in tech, you've got to know about tech. So that's kind of a given, that you are an expert in your field, in your area. Here are the other things. So as I share these with you, I'd just like you to kind of introspect and reflect for yourself what these things actually mean for you, what comes up for you in seeing them. So people and relationships become really important. So you're doing less and you are empowering other people more, and sitting very much more in a strategic decision-making space. So you've got your eyes on the future, and what needs to happen. And that includes, setting the direction and the strategy for the capability of your organization or your team. You're also, like I said, your focus is on people. So it's about unlocking their passions, so that they can do more, so that they feel like they belong, and because ultimately it's that's going to determine what they give to you and your team. We're there to support and empower people to solve. Now, it sounds like a really simple thing, but a really hard thing to do in practice, and I'll talk more about that later. In a little bit more detail. Sorry, my cursor keeps disappearing. What else? You're leading change and innovation. When your organization's trying to move into a different space or morph into something to stay relevant within the industry and so on, that becomes really important. You may also be the person who's needing to disrupt a little bit, but in a positive way, to bring about change. Whatever that looks like for your team, whether it's upskilling or doing things differently or upgrading in some way. And then you are self-authorizing and advocating. So you are not needing to seek permission or sign off from other people to run projects or initiatives and so on. Rather, maybe, here's my budget, that's what I need for the year. But in terms of the spend and the focus and, use of resources, those are your decisions. So that's the space that we're looking to operate in. Let me get a sense, I'd love to hear in the chat just a sense of, does that sound about right to you? Is that what you have in mind when you think about leadership? When you think about the sort of senior roles? Okay. And if there is something that I haven't mentioned, equally drop them in, because Alex is saying yes, mostly. So that leads me to kind of go, well, okay, so what else might be what else would you add to this list? Okay. So we're in the ballpark, right? It feels like, you know, we're in the right space. This is what we're thinking about. So that's good. Okay. Let me share with you then the next thing, which is, okay, there's the list has gotten it's doubled here. So we've got all those really important things to be doing as leaders. What are your thoughts about the things that are in the left-hand column? What comes to mind in reading those? So processes and tasks, delivering on the strategy, measuring and controlling performance, putting in place systems and processes. What comes to mind for you when you're reading that list? Okay, I think politics, conflict management, the negatives of being a leader and how you manage those are equally important. Yes. It's the skills for the type of leader I want to be, empathetic rather than politically. So I think you're talking about being in the right-hand column there. Operational management, yeah, manager role, not leader. Yes, yeah. These are very much the distinctions between manager and leader. That's not to say that you won't be doing things in the left-hand column, but we definitely can be more impactful when we're in the right-hand column. And when we're seeking those roles, those senior roles, those are the things that we want to be able to demonstrate as having had experience of. Does that make sense? Does that, any questions about that? No, all good. Okay, and the distinctions here, and I put in the right-hand column, you've got leaders who coach, because those who do coach can achieve those things much more easily. So you can be a leader in title, you can have the CTO title, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily are effective at doing the things in the right-hand column, okay? That's important for you to enjoy being in that position, but also for your people to feel a real commitment to their work and what they're doing, okay? So let's have a look then at some of the top challenges and dilemmas. I'm going to run through these again quite quickly. Number one, and these are things that I hear of and see over and over again in conversations with leaders at all levels, including founders, CTOs, all levels, it happens. The first one is assuming people get it and know what to do. And one of the things that we learn to do in Leaders Who Coach on the course is to let go of that, because it's quite limiting. It means that we miss opportunities to have an open or inviting conversation. And so it also, when we assume people get it, we get those nasty surprises. Things don't happen the way we expected. I thought we were aligned. I thought we agreed on everything that we were supposed to be doing. A week later, you meet up and you kind of go, okay, well, nothing happened, or it didn't happen the way you wanted it to. So we want to avoid those situations, because then we're in the territory of we're under greater time pressure and we feel that urge to kind of step in and take over or do or direct and be really sort of specific, telling people what to do, which again is one of those things that we need to let go of. I'll be talking more about that all the time. Okay, so next one, not letting go or difficulty delegating. Again, really common. If you've built something, if you're the founder of an organization, if you've built the architecture for the service that's being provided and so on, it's really hard to let go if you don't have the skills to have a conversation that says, here's what needs to happen. Are we clear on the impact or the outcome that we're trying to achieve here? Can you share with me how you intend to do that, how we're going to get there, and then understanding what your role is in that? So when we have difficulty letting go or delegating things, we tend to be focused on needing to have control. And so the thing that we're missing here is actually being able to let go, still have some control, but create the opportunity for other people to own what you want them to own, and let them apply their passions and their commitment in the way that you need to. Avoiding tough conversations. I think it sits really high up there for many of us. We hope that, you know, that problem might go away if I leave it alone, or I don't really know. Maybe I was at fault. Maybe I didn't make it clear, or I don't want to upset them, or I worry how they're going to react if I give them, if I call on something that they've done or challenge them in a way. Okay, just nice to see comments in the chat there. Please keep them coming, because it tells me that I'm sharing stuff with you that is relevant. Yes, I love that, Liz. Find my mind going, oh, but maybe this is too much of a burden for them. I hear that so much. I hear that. I don't want it. They've got so much on their plate. I can't give them that right now. Or they're going through a tough time. I can't, you know, that's just going to tip them over the edge. Okay, so these things happen. And so we let underperformance drag on. And because we don't feel like we have the confidence to have those the conversation, because maybe there was a misunderstanding, maybe I played a part in that, and we haven't got anything documented or agreed, so really hard. Then the other thing is making it personal versus not making it personal. What do I mean by that? Sometimes issues, when we're feeling triggered or emotionally charged, we can come to the wrong conclusions about the way something unfolded or an intention. So that can be personal when we make it personal. And then the versus not making it personal is sometimes, and a lot of the time, I'd say, we don't actually get under the surface and understand what makes this individual tick. And so if we can't tie in what their work is, or the task or the urgency of something to an individual's personal drive and values, it doesn't carry the sort of, there's nothing there that's pulling them along strong enough for them to commit to doing it, to prioritizing it. What else? Telling people what to do and jumping to solutions. This is the big one here, folks. And it's incredibly, it sits in a couple of spaces. I'd say 90%, 95% of leaders do it. It's kind of the way we're wired and taught from a young age. It often comes from a really good place. Sometimes it's because we're under enormous pressure and we just need to move through a stack of things. But the trouble with it is it's actually very disempowering, and it has the opposite effect of what we're trying to do, which is create accountability and make people feel like they own what they need to do. So we practice this a lot, and see Mag nodding there. This is, you know, one of the first biggest obstacles, I think, that leaders, as they're practicing new skills in conversations, realize we do it so much, and learning not to do it is actually quite a rewarding. How would you describe it, Mag, as that sort of
I think it's like rewiring your brain. You know, it's first of all, there's the awareness side. You know, you do it with all the right intentions. You do it because you care. You do it because you want to help. And actually, you're disempowering. And it's sort of, first of all, the realization, and then catch yourself. So no, don't let it out, and then kind of sit back and say, okay, how can I let you solution this? And you do get there after a while, but it takes practice.
Yeah.
And it's against instinct. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, because I think it's also the other part that I wanted to hint at was it's tied to a lot of and I say this from the experience of coaching female senior leaders, that we do this in a way that actually places a burden or we create a bottleneck for ourselves. We become the bottleneck. And I think this is something that we can learn to let go of and to great effect. So yeah, a mentor once taught me, even if the answer seems obvious, yes, it's important to let people fail safely and drive a direction. Your job's to help them learn and support. Yeah. And there's a moment at which you can share your expertise and knowledge, but that comes later in the conversation. So we can hold that back and do as much sort of getting them to think as possible. Cool. Okay. Love that sharing. What else? Oh, I skipped one here. Not knowing what your people are capable of. Those meetings, those regular one-to-one meetings, very often it's easy for them to slide into being tactical meetings when they should be more about their growth. And sometimes that's about, I don't really know what they want to cover, or they don't know what we want to use that time for. So we get into all of those things. But it's really important that we understand what makes them tick. Where are they wanting to get to? What's their hope or their dream of where they're going to be in a couple of years' time? That's useful for us on many levels. One, in supporting them. Two, knowing and being able to grow the capability of our teams and thinking ahead. And then number 8, not contracting and negotiating in conversations. We do a lot of creative alignment in conversations, but we miss the bit at the end, which is, okay, so what does that look like? And actually getting the person to imagine and talk through what they're going to do. This is really crucial because it gives us as a leader an opportunity to course correct that bit of advice that or that thing that you knew you could do. That's the place that we can then share that and offer that as something for them to consider. And then actually contracting, okay, by when are you going to do that? This sounds so obvious, but I promise you this is something we tend to skip over, and it usually is because we're under time pressure, the meeting's coming to an end, you've got another meeting to run to. And so we assume that you've got that in hand and you know what to do. So we're back to number 1. I alternate my one-to-ones for work and personal development and add templates for agenda points to cover. Excellent, love that. Yep. Yes, I agree with Mag. On that. Okay, folks. So any comments about any of these? What I'd love to get a sense of is, which of these do you find the most difficult? So if you could just in the chat put 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever one it is, which is the one that you find the most challenging to do consistently? Okay, not letting go, difficulty delegating, avoiding tough conversations. What else have we got? 6, telling people what to do and jumping to solutions. Yep. And 8, not contracting. Okay. Yep. Assuming people get it, telling people what to do. Navigating the cultural conflict of teams needing very hands-on direction versus creating an A team who would love to be self-empowered. Yeah. And there's a challenge with, we're well educated enough to know that micromanaging isn't the way to go. And so we move towards this, wanting to give people fuller or greater autonomy. But then what we get back isn't what we expected. So we move back into that other space. And then, we're in this vicious circle with people. 1 to 4. Okay. Yeah, so these are difficult spaces to be in. They are emotionally triggering. They are hard places to be. We're dealing with people and emotions and moods and time pressures and everything else. So these are really difficult spaces. Okay, so that's what I talk to leaders a great deal about. But we have a room full of professional tech women. So there are some additional challenges. Now, I would really love to get I'm wanting some feedback on this here because, yes, I'm a mum. I've got 3 teenagers, a cat and a dog, and my mum who lives with us. So I have a very full household. I've built a business prior to this. I've worked in organizations, I've led teams. I've done that balancing act, and it still continues. But I want to share with you the particular challenges that I think women in tech have. So I have my own perspective, and I have the perspective, what I'm sharing with you now is what I hear from women who I support and partner as a coach. But I would really like to hear from you what this kind of looks like. So here's what I'm aware of. Being spoken to differently by our male colleagues, that can feel distinct, nuanced, only something that maybe we feel, and that's really hard if we're working in a male-dominated environment to voice that. But I had that recently in an organization that's putting all their leaders through as a cohort through leaders who coach, because they're being charged with doubling the size of the company in a short space of time. So, and the women on that cohort, it took a while, but they did voice, about probably halfway through. So after about 6 group calls, for them to voice that this was an issue. I've raised it with the organization, and they're taking it very seriously, which is great. Leadership style that looks and feels different to your peers, right? A really common one. We have just a very different approach, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Working hard, 2 times as hard, many more times as hard to get noticed. It's a myth. It doesn't work. If it has worked for you and you've worked in an organization that's recognized it, then fantastic. But we can really graft hard and put ourselves under enormous pressure, and still feel like other people are making more progress than ourselves. Not speaking the same language or culture shorthands. So, right, I've been ignored in meetings where I was the only female. Yeah. Not speaking the same language or culture shorthands. I think there's just, whether it's the way we bring up our kids, way we were brought up, the type of people and where they've been educated, when they join the organization, do they know each other from before? Do they play sports together? Do they go drinking together? There is all of that maybe doesn't interest us so much. Right, in my younger years, I would use the same language as my male colleagues. They would be assertive, but I would be aggressive. Yeah. And so we get called on that. And there's plenty of research that says we're judged differently, and even the feedback that we get from people, right? The other challenge is, how do I self-advocate? How do I make sure my peers and my boss knows how good I am without it feeling like I'm bragging or showboating? And then, hand in hand with that is, how do I get my peers to back me when I'm not in the room? How can I be certain that they're going to speak positively of me or back me up or even advocate for me, as I might do for them in a meeting? So that's something that happens, right? We have limited voice or presence at the decision-making table. So you can be really senior and not get a chance to speak or be spoken over. I've seen that a great deal. Good, I'm glad you're enjoying this woman-specific part, Sarah. Good. I hope I'm hitting the right notes here. So confusing integrity with perfection. What do I mean by this? I've not come across a woman who doesn't have integrity about how, the quality of work that we deliver. And it's really important to us because we feel like so much hangs on it, our reputation, you know, whether we've left our team in a good space for us to go on holiday, so many things that we think about and worry about. And then there's perfection. And I think there's a relationship here that I certainly have experienced, and I'll be interested if others have as well. But there's this tension of feeling like it's got to be perfect before you can put it out there, because that speaks to your integrity. And actually, it doesn't need to be perfect. We can express our integrity in many other ways. And sometimes some of that is letting someone else do it, and just saying, hey, here are the boundaries, or, you know, here are the walls of this thing. I need it to have this kind of color. But you fill it, you know, you fill it in how you like, and not putting ourselves under that pressure of time and scope and work and so on to get something out there that's perfect. So we can still have integrity. We don't need to be perfect. I would really, yes, absolutely. It's a higher bar than I expected my peers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm glad that's something I didn't just make up, but it's something I'm, you know, very often you are listening to clients and you're deep in their space and you're listening for what is that tension, what's going on here, and trying to put words to it. So, and that's as a, you know, in thinking about these challenges, that's kind of how I expressed it. So I'm glad that's resonated. For mums, there's the demands are complex, and there's conflicts, and, you know, and we're context switching, and they use very different parts of our brain, and that takes energy, and sometimes it gets out of whack. And so, for example, I was talking to a client who's gone back to work. She's just had a son. He's 18 months old. Not just, but 18-month-old son, and working part-time. She puts in those long days on those parts. She works 3 days a week. And she said to me, you know, I was doing Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, but it was doing my head in trying to navigate that space. So I decided to just work Tuesday to Thursday. I can be totally focused on work. And then I have 4 days with him as a parent. So someone's come off mute. If you could mute yourself just so we don't get some interference. Just check your mic there isn't, in fact, let me have a quick look, see if I can see who that might be.
I think it's fine now, Sihan.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, I find that distracting, I'm sorry. So that parenting piece, being a carer, it's different. It takes energy, and sometimes it takes a while to switch out of one and switch back into the other. So that's a challenge that plays into our day. What else? Yeah, number 8.
Laura.
Yeah.
Laura's in it right now to prove the point.
Having a full down, yes, meltdown. Yeah, you know, it's the same whether you've got a dog or, you know, and working out of a noisy place. All of these things can be quite hard. Okay, I jumped a couple here. Undiagnosed or hidden neurodiversity and masking. I wanted to put this in here because we've become a lot more aware of it. I personally have become aware of it. One of my daughters recently diagnosed as autistic. It explained everything, and it's been an absolute treasure to have come to this point. I wish it had been picked up sooner. I didn't know, and what a difference it makes to just understand, and that, you know, it's forced me to slow down. I practice my coaching in a different way with her. It's still very applicable, and I'll share some of those things with you in a minute. But we also do a lot of masking, and that can create a lot of anxiety for us. Women are really good at masking. Autistic women can be really good at masking, and that's draining and exhausting. So that's something else that we may be dealing with. And you know, if you've got ADHD or something, a condition that just means you're having to do a lot of adjusting in your role, then that happens. Feeling like the token X person, Black person, female, whatever that, again, just, you know, the question that some women have asked me is, I feel like I'm the only brown person in the room, and I feel a sort of apologetic for it in some way. How should I treat that? And it's, you know, look, everyone is given their gifts. If that's your gift, then use it. That's what I say. So, you know, if you are if you feel like you're the token person, first of all, find out for sure if that's the case. But secondly, you know, if that is on the agenda, and this may be controversial, but I just feel like we have plenty of disadvantages. So if you have something that sets you out in that way, embrace it, because other women like you will be grateful for you doing that. And then you feel like you have to have all the answers for everyone else, for every member of your team. You're caring about them. You want them to be successful. You want them to enjoy. You worry about them not getting what they need out of it. Okay, let me just pause here. So yes to the complexity of being a parent. Related to number 10, emotional labor of other underrepresented groups. Folks looking to you, talking with you, asking you for your time to share what they're feeling and worried about, and a little recognition that the majority of other leaders don't. Yes. Yes. And you know what, even as a leader who coaches, it's okay to say no sometimes and protect your energy and make sure you are enriched yourself and you're not being drained. But I do understand that as well. You do. And this is something that actually came up in one of our cohorts. It's like, okay, now I have all these skills and I'm putting these things to practice. Everyone's coming to me with their issues, and they know I'm a safe pair of hands. And well, you know what, it's okay also to say, let's schedule some time for that because I've got a full plate today, and protect yourself from that. That's okay. Just following the trail here. Yes. Okay. Feeling like you have to have the answers for everyone else. Done that. And my final one, I think, is giving yourself permission to invest in yourself. I've had quite a few conversations with women that say investing in their leadership skills feels like a luxury, whether it's the cost or the time. We just need to stop. We need to give ourselves, we wouldn't counsel anyone else in that way. And so we have to take ourselves just as seriously. And it's in the same way that it's okay to protect yourself, it's absolutely okay to invest in yourself. And I'm hoping that's why, you know, I hope you're interested in the training offering that I'll talk about a little bit more. Just want to come back to a point here. I have an added problem. I'm going to check time here. I have an added problem being respected or valued because I come from a professional background as a delivery manager or BA rather than a software developer. It doesn't mean I'm not a good tech leader, and actually I provide a different perspective, which is helpful for strategy and decision making. Absolutely. And so sometimes that's around the language that we perhaps need to shift in order to make ourselves heard, or to, you know, be in that space and prove that we've got a different perspective. So what I'm going to talk about in a little while is very much speaking into that. It's using questions and inquiry rather than doing the telling in situations where we're trying to dig deeper and build that rapport with people, but also potentially highlight things that they may not have thought of, but doing it in a collaborative way. Yeah, I come from a tech background, software engineer, fully agree. You can be a great leader in tech without. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Let me just pause there a moment. Give me some feedback here. What are you hearing? What have you picked up so far? I'm really curious as to what the thoughts or feelings are that you are having at this point from everything. And feel free if you want to open, speak rather than chat. I'm sure we can do that too. Okay.
I personally would love to hear from people vocally. It warms my heart. So if anyone is feeling like they go.
I think for me, it's obvious that a lot of us feel the same and we have the same challenges. And maybe not all of them are the same, but we seem to struggle with the same things. And maybe in different ways or at different times in our careers or, progression. But I think these are things that maybe people feel, but they never talk about them, or they never discuss, like, how can we overcome this? Because we think other people don't have the same experience.
Right. And we are so similar. They're absolutely not enough is spoken about it, and it takes time. And bearing in mind, the things that I just shared with you, those come out of coaching sessions, and sometimes those are things that they've never spoken to anyone else about. That's how sensitive they are. That's how important they are. And to share those openly, it can feel like quite a risk. So we don't, unless you create that environment for people to be able to do that, right? So yeah, thank you.
Rita, did you want to say something?
I was just going to add, I think I totally agree with what Alex just mentioned. It's like we all go through the similar pointers, but we don't realize that it is everybody's kind of feeling the same thing, and we kind of think that it's just us, so we just keep quiet and we just sort of say maybe it's something we need to work upon it, we need to get do something better here, or do something about it or something like that. But also I feel like it somehow creates that inferiority complex within you, where you are always thinking that you're not good enough, you're not doing your 100%, and that holds you back even further, I think. So this is a good way of looking at it and realizing that, yes, this is not something I have, myself, and it's something we need to work, and it's common. So it's really good.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I'm glad about that. So thank you, folks, for sharing that. Yeah. All right, so let me share with you. I'm just going to touch a little bit so you've got the context of what I'm about to share with you in terms of skill that you can use or start practicing with, where it sits within the course. And okay, so if you've looked at any of the information on the website, there's a ton of information there, by the way. So I'm not going to go to very deep in here, but there is a lot of information on the website if you're curious about anything that I share in these next couple of slides. So the skills, there are 12 skills that cut across 4 competencies, and each competency builds on the previous competency. So what we do in capability and capacity is built on actually the previous 3 competencies. We kind of bring it all together with a focus of you then growing the people in your teams. Conversation skills is I'm going to work backwards through this, so it might seem a little odd. Conversation skills, you know, is about listening and asking good questions, and also watching how we use language, and making sure we're not inadvertently putting up barriers or walls between us and the other person because we're using different language or terminology. And that we get into that space after we've built an understanding of emotional connections. What's going on in the dynamic from one conversation to the next, in terms of the level of trust between us, and also how I'm showing up, how present I am, and what does that enable me to do? Because the more present I can be, the better listening I can do. And if I'm listening really deeply, I can ask great questions that are, you know, really cut to the point of that individual. Now, the important thing about all of this is, in our conversations, it's about putting the individual at the center of it. You know, we can let go of the ego, our ego, and focus on them as individuals. So, but our starting place is us, right? And on this course is, how can we be grounded as leaders? Because what we want to avoid, to that point that you just mentioned, Richa, I'm worried I'm not saying that right, forgive me, is the self-doubt that we have. Okay, we want to be able to do things that ground us, so that those other voices, those negative voices, that constant barrage of you're different, you're not the same as us, and so on, or, you know, do you fit in here? Do you really have a voice? We can keep that door much more firmly closed, because it's not helpful. And so being grounded is about understanding your personal values, having clarity about what your blind spots are, because those are just as important. And then how does that affect how you show up with integrity? And then how are we communicating to our team members, to our direct reports, how you know, we're there for them? What is this contract between us about how I'm going to show up for you, and what's my expectation of you in this dynamic? And I'm going to jump back to the final competency. This is where we get into, you know, growing your awareness, but also thinking about how can you grow the awareness of your direct reports? How do you get into that space of designing and agreeing actions? How can they own those actions? How can you make sure that they're really committed to doing those? And then thinking about growth goals, as well as, you know, course correcting and accountability. And how do you sustain that for as long as possible, right? So, okay, now within that, you'll see along the bottom, the green, there are also some concepts that I introduced through the course. And one we've just covered, which was the managers versus leaders, and leaders who coach. The next one I want to share with you is the WHO energy model, quickly followed by, let's see if I can get that up there, asking good questions. So I'm just going to share with you, these are from the course itself. So I just want to share those. I'm going to talk over them. And to this idea of you developing a voice, quietening those doubts, and developing your own voice and confidence in the way that you're showing up for your team, but also how you navigate the landscape also with your peers and your boss, how you can actually coach upwards too. So let me get into that. Conscious of time, so I don't, I may speed up. The main thing here that I want you to take away is, there's a lot of main things actually, that's not fair to say, but if I said to you, let go, what would that conjure up for you? Just very quickly in the chat, before I get into the WHO energy model, if I said to you, let go more, what thoughts pop in your head in the chat? Yeah, not trying to do everything. Relinquish control. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Share accountability equally. being clear about what that is just as important. Knowing what your acceptable variables are. You know, what are the no-go zones? Okay, stop worrying. Not sure I'm ready for it. Yeah, not control. Okay, so there's a little bit of these things we know, right? But they can feel a little scary. But I want to show you how it can feel less scary. Would that be fair to say that it feels a little scary to say, let go? All right, because what we're trying to kind of be in control of as much as possible. All right, okay. All right, let me share with you the WHO energy model. Let's see. So this is one of the videos with my very rubbish PowerPoint drawing. So the WHO energy model is basically about understanding that there are, sometimes we have good days, sometimes we have bad days. Okay, so WHO positive and WHO negative. And when we're WHO positive, we feel great, right? We can honor our values, we feel like having a good day, we can smile, we believe in ourselves, we feel confident, emotionally committed to our team, our work. We've got clarity of thought, we know exactly what needs to be doing. When we're in a not so good place, all of that is compromised. We doubt ourselves, we become detached, we step away from all of that. But that's all of us, right? We can be that in a day. We can go from one to the other in a day, or from meeting to meeting, right? And so when we're in that negative space, we can feel quite stuck and blocked. It doesn't feel good. But when we're in a good space, we feel energized, right? Because we've got control. We feel we've got freedom and choice. So imagine these two states as being here and there. So in any given day, I think we're going to run through, yeah, I'm just checking what it's going to do here. Right, yes, so in any given day, we start off with, you know, fabulous day. Mondays are glorious, so we get started at work. But then something happens in a meeting, or someone says a comment, or we didn't get a chance to speak, or someone spoke over us, and then we can feel quite deflated. I hope you're enjoying my character. It's kind of sunken into herself. So we've gone from feeling great to feeling really crappy. And this happens for our direct reports too. So if we can now think about them, you know, we've got conflicting thoughts, we're detached, we're not really sure what value we're adding. Am I in the right job? Should I be here? All of these thoughts. Why am I trying so hard? I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere, or, you know, I'm stuck with this particular task and I don't really know what to do with it. So that can be a really uncomfortable place. If we put this person at the center of the conversation, we can start to see that actually this individual in their best selves knows what to do. They can troubleshoot, they can think creatively about this problem, they know how to go and have that conversation. So our job as a leader is to help our direct report get from here to there, to make that shift, right? So that they can feel in control, they've got freedom and choice. So that's the WHO energy model. How does that feel to kind of think about yourself in that role? Does this resonate? What does this give you? Just curious. Ooh, I think we're going again. Let me shift out of that. Yep, you can relate to it. Explains changes in behavior. Okay. No, I wanna move on. Thank you. Okay. It's going to crash if I try and do anything fancy here. Let me see if I've moved. Yes. Okay. We can often not be aware of it. Yeah, Mag. I can think of some clear examples where one meeting made my day. end on a sad beat than a happy beat. Yeah. It can be tiny. It can be just noticing something, right? It can be quite hard to name, but it can shift where we are and how we're seeing things. So the thing about then our role in the conversation with our direct reports is even our peers, or even when we're trying to influence at the decision-making table or working with our boss, is the most powerful thing we can do is be in a place of listening and asking questions. And what I'm going to share with you is the different ways that we can use questions. And this is one of the spaces that we get into on the course, which is obviously, first of all, drawing out the details and feelings. Tell me more about that. What's going on there? What brought you to that conclusion? Okay. Then there are questions about elaborating for clarification. Okay, so when you say, they said, can you tell me more about that interaction? Because oftentimes we come to assumptions or conclusions about someone's intention because we've got our own dialogue, and that overlays what actually happened. So sometimes we just need to get more clarification about what was the sequence of things, what actually did happen. Another way we can use questions is to challenge assumptions and limiting beliefs. Is that really true? How do we know that actually happened? We do a lot of just accepting what people say at face value as being the truth, because it's uncomfortable to say anything else, or no one's expecting me to disagree, or whatever that situation happens to be. So our role is to create that space and ask the questions, allow the individual to think more deeply. Is that really the case? How do I know that for certain? And part of that is also looking for evidence. How can we be sure that that approach will work? How can we be certain that we've addressed that risk? What do we need to know or find out? Discovering alternatives and exploring consequences. Hey, for a moment, I wonder if there's a third way. Do you think that might be worth exploring? Or even, look, we've come up with these options. Why don't we sleep on it and come back, tomorrow and come back at this and see if another way of doing this has come up? All we're doing is inviting different possibilities, different perspectives. So this can be a really influencing way of being in the conversation. This is not about being confrontational or trying to trip someone up or lead them down a path that says, actually, see, you're wrong. My line of questioning has just proven that. We're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is really just allow and create space for people to think more deeply, because that's how we can influence and create emotional connection to ourselves and give ourselves that voice and give ourselves legitimacy. And then the other way that we can do it with our direct reports is imagining the future. Where do you want to be? How do you want, what's that look like? And then examining what is that gap? What do we need to do for you to be able to move into that space? Or with people who spend a lot of time, their space is kind of setting out roadmaps for the company and so on. Sometimes we don't have much time to think really deeply about it, but we hang on to or become attached to a particular idea. And so that us asking questions to give more confidence to the robustness of those ideas is how we can influence and be in that conversation. In the interest of time, I'm going to just list these up. I'm going to pick a couple of them. Questioning isn't about interrogation, it's about expanding thinking and encouraging curiosity. In these conversations, what we're trying to drive towards is forward momentum. We don't get stuck in a loop of venting or being annoyed or frustrated. We'd like to find a way forward. It's my son above me. The other thing is how we ask those questions. My challenge when I became a coach was not, I'd stack my questions. Someone would talk and I'd have 1,000 ideas. And I'd be like, so what do you do about this? And have you thought about X? And so it's actually unhelpful to do that. So the way that our techniques for asking questions is just as important as what we're asking. So a single really short question like, why is that important now, can be the most powerful question that you place on the table, rather than, have you thought about, is this going to happen? You know, asking 2 or 3 questions. The other thing I've also learned is that from a neurodiversity perspective, stacking questions is really unhelpful. It's like, which question do you want me to answer? Where do you want me to go with that? Okay. I'm going to leave the other ones out there. I think they're fairly sort of self-explanatory, but it's really important. And we do get into that space of, you know, what our energy is, noticing the other person's energy. One of the exercises we do, which is quite a fun one, is we watch a 2 or 3 minute clip of a movie scene. And we're watching for body language and energy and exchanges and who's it directed at. So verbal acts and non-verbal acts, so the gestures, the changes, the shifts in energy. Now, of course, they're actors and, you know, they've probably done 100 takes or whatever to get that perfect shot, but these are quite fascinating 2 or 3 minute clips to observe. And Mag, you know, I think you can, you had a similar experience. You have to watch them like multiple times, right?
Absolutely, because the nuance of it is often quite missed, and it's crazy then once you start noticing all these body language cues or direct questions, indirect questions, people butting in over the top of others. You start to see it everywhere and it's hard to turn it off. Yeah, it just gives you a lot more feedback about what is going on. And I wanted to say, when you were talking about the questions there and asking simple questions, if you take away one thing, that's a really good thing to take away with you as a challenge to self today. Don't be like University Challenge. Jeremy Paxton, I'm like, I've forgotten everything already by the time he comes to the end of the question. So simple questions are super powerful.
So yes, thank you, Mag. Yeah, so thoughts from people. I'd really kind of be interested. How does that, what are you picking up? What are you taking away from this?
So I like what you said about stacking questions. I'm really bad at that, but it does remind me of, I saw a talk at a conference last year and it was 7 deadly sins of questioning, and they were talking about some of those issues as well. So it was nice to hear you reinforce that. And I know I still do it as well. So it's something I'll try and make more of a concerted effort to avoid. That was a really good one.
And also, thank you, Carly. Also, when we're in those meetings where we want a voice, it's really, we do ourselves a disservice by stacking those questions, because the response is, well, which one? And so it becomes a distraction rather than actually moving the conversation forward. So it's a, you know, that really short question can be the most powerful thing. If that's all you say is ask one powerful question in the meeting, you make people think, that's really important. Makes me be more self-aware and gives me ideas of better using questions every day and listening more. Yes, and you'll get on the course, there are cheat sheets for pretty much every skill. There's about 300 different ways of questions and statements and so on to practice with. And it's not to overwhelm, but it's like pick 1 or 2, try them out, see what happens this week when you use them. And then we come back and reflect on those. Okay, so avoiding solutioning. So by going in with questions, we are actually being more of a thinking partner to our peers, to our direct reports, to our boss. And that is super powerful. As well as, you know, and that means when we're doing that, when we're being a thinking partner, it means that we're really listening deeply. We're using their language. So it's landing. We're not creating little sort of, what do you mean by that? And I've got to process that. Oh, okay. And creating sort of jarring moments in the conversation. We're keeping the conversation smooth, and we're allowing them to go to a level that they haven't gone to before. I'm going to share with you, Valerie, some of you may know, she posted something lovely on LinkedIn, and you'll find that link on the page about this program. I just wanted to share that. I'm not going to read it, but I'll leave that for you to kind of absorb that and see if there's anything that you feel like I would like that for myself. Because these are the things that we practice. It's about who you are. This is not about molding you into a different type of leader. This is about embracing who you are and making that flourish, so that you can show up with confidence about who you are, because that confidence is so important to you, to your team, and it helps you achieve a lot of the things that you want to achieve, and removes a bunch of blockers as well, obstacles that we inadvertently put there or make difficult for ourselves. So yeah, okay, cool. All right, so folks, I'm going to jump into the next bit, which is just very quickly what you could expect in the course, so that you've got an idea and think about, is that for me? And then the application process, what to expect with that. So I'm going to get into sort of some of the specifics here for the last 10 minutes or so. So I'd like to take 5 minutes now and just get a sense of, actually, what I might do is, I'd like to see more faces. I'd love to hear in this moment, what are you feeling?
I feel like getting a really good direction of where I want to move forward, which I think, as a manager or as a, once you get into that position, you kind of get stuck into your day-to-day stuff, and you feel like what's next for you is not very clear because it's not very obvious. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of, people who can kind of advise with what do you need to do next, because it's kind of a different role, coaching altogether. So I feel like this is something that is giving me what I always look up to throughout my career. I've started, and I always look forward to what's next for me and try to work towards that. So I think this is giving me that, and I'm really grateful that I've got this opportunity where I'm understanding this. So yeah, that's the thought in my mind.
Thank you. That's lovely. Yeah. Do other people feel similarly? Just a thumbs up in the chat. If that works for you. Yeah. Okay. Just looking around different places. Okay. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, and like Mag said, if there's just one thing that you take away from today and experiment with or try out, a big part of what we do is experimenting. I've got one more little thing to share with you, so to kind of make it a little tangible for you. So let me go back to sharing my screen. That's just a snapshot of what the course looks like. 2/3 of the course is online self-paced learning, and 1/3 is our group and weekly enrichment calls. And I'll share more about that in a minute. There are 100 video lectures, so you get to hear me 100+ times. Some people listen to me on double speed because apparently I talk a little slow. As you saw, we've got 12 skills to work through. So most skills have somewhere between 5 and 7 or 8 video lectures that range, average length is about 5 minutes for each video lecture. And for each skill, we have an enrichment call. So you'll do this work on skill 1, we meet for our first enrichment call, then we move on to skill 2, and so on. 12 quizzes, just to make sure they're really easy, just to make sure that, you know, you watch the videos. The platform also tracks, so you do need to have completed watching the videos. Where's my cursor? Come back. 12 assignments, and these assignments are designed around your work, so they're not extra stuff, and there's no dissertation to write here. These are practical things, to the conversations that you're already having that you might record and then do a self-evaluation on. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Worksheets and cheat sheets. There's links for resources and further learning. So if you want to go and dive deeper into the research that I mentioned in there, or the science, or someone else talking about laughter and humor, all of that is there. Online discussions. So your assignments, you actually submit in the chat below in the lesson area. And that way, that's worked really well for people to get feedback from each other and see what other people are thinking, in a similar way that people have said this evening. It's been nice to hear that, you know, it's all, I'm not alone in this, and that other people feel the same way. One of the great things about the enrichment calls is getting to hear from your peers and exchange thoughts and ideas and so on. That is hugely valuable to people, as well as the online discussions, to keep you motivated, to share additional stuff that's come up maybe in our calls that we kind of want to explore a little bit further. You get a study pack and study schedule, so you can, I encourage people to print that out, tick that off, you like checklists and so on. Weekly posts and articles, and of course you're part of the wider Better Conversations community. In terms of the assignments, as I mentioned, there's self-reflection and self-awareness type assignments, just lovely. We start off with some really easy, simple conversations to have with people that are sometimes quite surprisingly valuable for our relationships. That's all I'll say. We do self-evaluations, team observations. So I mentioned the movie scene observation. That's kind of to get used to the tool and tuning into body language and gestures and asks or talking over and so on. So that then we do it. You take a team meeting and you do an observation on your team. Deepen your awareness there. We look at case studies, conflict case studies, real scenarios where I've been involved either mediating or coaching clients, growth road mapping. So I share with you a simple tool, but quite detailed and nuanced, and to create the clarity for yourself, but you can go on and use that in some shape or form for your direct reports as well. And we wrap up with a time capsule that captures where you are now and where you want to be a year from now. And then the enrichment calls are 90 minutes. So that's 18 tutor contact hours. We do skill deep dives. We talk about the competencies, you know, your wins, strong wins and harder wins. We talk about the assignments that you did. How was that? How did you get on with that? We do breakouts. We do live coaching conversation practice, so you get to coach one another and practice those skills and get the feedback from a cohort that's kind of wrapped you in a big warm blanket, and Q&A. So, you know, just checking in and seeing how you're getting on with things. Some things I just want to share with you for leaders who've gone through Leaders Who Coach. I think what Catherine's saying here is just the acknowledgement that she has a different style, and that's totally okay. And her style was, you know, creating environments of learning and discovery among her team, so really empowering them. Osa was wanting to she would do a lot of prep for her meetings, and learning to let go was a big growth area for her, and just realizing she didn't have to have all the answers for them, and that actually it was more empowering if they were kind of co-creating that. So that hugely liberating, and something that Siobhan speaks to as well, just like, I don't need to have all the answers, and giving herself permission to not have the answers meant actually she could be in this space of curiosity and asking questions and listening much more easily. Here's the artifact I wanted to share with you just briefly. This is kind of an anatomy of a conversation, if you will. It's the in the top left there, you've got this is how I run my conversation calls with people. So there's a check-in. How are you doing? How, just connecting in that way, talking about the challenges and wins that they've had. And then, okay, so what do we want to cover today? Next to that, you can see ambition, creativity, and passion. These are the values of this individual, and they're important shorthands for understanding why they may be struggling with something, and the fact that, you know, that's I'm not happy about how this turned out, but I don't really know what may be going on here. This creates a nice shorthand, because we can say, okay, well, actually your creativity was being compromised here. You weren't able to be creative, and that was really important to you. That's an important facet of how you show up and work. And so the bottom half, you can see there, is capture of, this is not full sentences. I scribble, so, you know, I know what I've written, but I'm really just capturing keywords, phrases, things that they're saying, repetitions, what's come up again and again as a theme for them, ideas, things that we might explore again. So it's just a space to capture some things that help trigger me in conversation, or we come back to, you know, 20 minutes later in the conversation and say, you know, you mentioned this quite a few times, that what's going on there? Let's have a bit of space in that. And then the top right hand is kind of coming to the wrap up. This is the contracting, this is agreeing the actions and what needs to happen. And then doing a bit of reflection about, okay, what are we taking away from this today? What do you understand about yourself now that we've explored this? So this is about conversation mastery. The thing you see on the right hand side there, power, stands for preparation, prepare, observe, with experiment and refine. It's a paradigm we use. We kind of look at different situations. Okay, what preparation do we need to do? What have I observed? What am I'm going to try these two different phrases in this conversation. I'm going to be a little bit more present this way. So we're experimenting. Okay, that worked really well. That one I've got to tweak a little bit. So we sit in this loop of really sort of experimenting. All right, cracking on. The schedule, just so you have it, this is also, you'll find this, if you're interested in, if you want to apply for a spot on this cohort, I'll give you my email details if you don't have them already, to just message me and I'll send you the link to the online application form. It has these dates on them. So I just wanted to share those with you here, but you can look at those again on the website. We've tried to schedule these to avoid Easter and half terms. And we ask that you join for a minimum of 10 of the 12, understanding that there are holiday commitments and so on. Just a reminder that it is CPD certified. You earn 50 CPD hours. That's a lot. Okay, so your application, what to expect. We'll just gather some contact details. We'll understand your role a little bit more. And then we've got some questions that we'd like you to give some deep thought to. And I'll say this now with a lot of love, please don't put in short answers that are like 3 sentences. It makes it really hard for us to evaluate your application and really understand what's your level of self-awareness, how do you thrive, who you are as a person. We're really trying to get to know who you are. So the more that you can give us, the more thoughtful responses that are a couple of paragraphs, 1 or 2 paragraphs per each of these points, it would be really helpful and appreciated. And it just means we can actually process your application. If you send us one-line answers to them, we'll come back to you and offer you a chance to resubmit. But we really can't, it's really hard for us to work with short answers. Anyway, I think I've labored that point plenty. Deadline for the application.
No short answers, everybody.
Yeah, short questions, but longer answers. Thanks, Mag. Application deadline is the 25th of March, 5 p.m. UK time, and we'll let you know if you've got a spot on the cohort by Monday, the 4th of April. The other thing that we do ask people to do is to sign up to these conditions. It's simply a way of ensuring that we process the applications fairly. So we do ask that you've undertaken some tech training within the last 15 years, and you've got at least 2 direct reports, because a lot of the work that we do and the assignments, are about working with your direct reports. So having that context and that reference really important. It is a 4-hour per week commitment. That's the self-study and group study. So really have a think about, talk to your partners about if you need their support to basically put that commitment in, because you'll get more out of it if you can stay up to date week to week. It's hard if you start to fall behind and you can't contribute to the discussions as much, or you may be missing a lot of what your peers are saying if you're behind and they've watched the videos that we're talking about. So 10 out of 12 enrichment calls in order to get the 50 CPD hours. And just a sort of, I guess, a gesture or promise that, what you're learning, you will share with your team and model and talk to your team about and coach them on as well, so that we can get this sort of approach to leadership out there to a much wider area. You are a conduit and you are modeling for people, and people are watching and noticing, whether that's your peers, your boss, or your direct reports. So that's kind of why we're here and doing that with you. If you want any more questions, question samples, and you haven't got it already, there is an infographic that you can get off the website that's got sample questions and phrases and the sort of the flow of a conversation from creative alignment through to contracting. So that's kind of a nice shorthand to just have, if that's helpful. So if you have any questions or you're interested in this cohort that's sponsored by ourselves, RecWorks and Navoda, then that's kind of the commitment that we're making here, is we've got 15 spots that we've dedicated to aspiring women CTOs, and this cohort kicks off on the 20th of April. So if that's of interest, those are my contact details. Get in touch, and I will send you a link to the application form. And just give you a moment to kind of take a screen grab if you need to. I'm happy to stick around if anyone's got any questions. But I'd love to, if we could just wrap up with a question there. Does any tech training count? Yes, we've kept that purposefully loose because in recognition of the challenges that we talked about at the beginning, that may have created a delay in where you are compared to maybe male counterparts. I don't have any direct reports as product owner, but I'm still responsible for a squad. Yes, that still qualifies. Because you're having to influence, so that's the exception that we're making there. So do apply and make that clear that you have responsibility for a squad and obviously all the influence that that requires. So please do include that. Cool. I'm glad you've enjoyed the session. Let me, I'm going to come off here, and I would just love for folks to drop in the chat. If you need to drop off, totally understand, but if you could just leave us a sort of key takeaway in the chat so that we've got that feedback and know whether we've hit the spot for you this evening, or what we could do different or in addition another time that might be of interest. Mag, do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would love to say, as a woman in technology and a technologist for 2 decades, that I really encourage you to spend this quality time on yourselves. It will boost you in all directions that you don't even know you could be boosted in or that you wanted to be. And it's a lovely experience as well. I think I'm not a mother myself, but having, you know, moved from my first cohort to my second, I thought, no, I couldn't love them as much as the first, but there's such a feeling of support and empowerment and safety and care in the groups of peers to each other, and obviously from us as tutors, that it is a super rewarding experience. So having been a student and now a teacher, there's just a lot of good feelings in that experience.
Thank you, Mag. Yes, we do. Yes, the bonding that happens within the cohorts and you know, and is just it's very nourishing, right? It's quite wonderful to have that space. And it, you know, it comes together really quickly too. The sort of levels of trust and so on develop really quickly, and that just means that the journey is that much richer, because people say things and might sort of say, oh, you know, that's not, it may be nothing or whatever, but actually they discover that no, actually it's big, and other people feel it too. So that's nice. That's nice to feel like you can put words to it and it's legitimate. So that's really important. I'm just going to read a couple of the takeaways. Understanding yourself and others, using questions to understand and build connection. Think about where you are and where you want to go. Key takeaways: avoiding stacking questions and connecting more with other women. There are so many shared experiences. Yeah. Lots of topics that I've been wondering about as a woman in tech leadership, but don't have the support network to develop with. Thank you. Yeah. Look, you know, the who conversation tips, and most importantly, being reminded you aren't alone in these thoughts. Absolutely. So look, you know, totally welcome your applications. I hope you kind of have the opportunity and the time to do this, and I hope to see you soon when we kick off the call. So kick off the course. So yeah, do reach out, folks. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Take care.